NOS4A22, Book 2, Trust No One, Chapter 5, The Dark Reality. I killed my parents. Plus, when I was young, a little kid, I killed my brother. Stu hit her straight with the facts of his dark reality. You must have had your reasons. What made you do it? Please tell me about your brother and everything, Cammy said without hesitation. Stu first talked about his brother. My brother was younger. He was 3 years old and I was 6. It was like my parents stopped caring about me. I needed their love and attention, but they were too busy with their jobs and with my brother. One night I couldn't take it anymore. It was like I didn't exist. I listened to my mom and dad outside of my brother's room by the archway, and they spoke of how proud they were to be my brother's parents. They said things like how they thought he was the most amazing kid and that he would inherit the world. I waited for a good few minutes standing in the hallway around the corner with my forehead pressed against the wall. I knew my brother was sleeping soundly because of the tone my parents spoke with, so I walked in quickly and silently, straight to my brother's bed. I pulled the pillow from under his sleeping head and put it over his face. I sat on it, pressing as hard as I could, and held it down with my hands. He stopped moving after only a few seconds and couldn't make much of a noise before that. My parents thought he just died in his sleep and blamed the embalming chemicals they dealt with. Is that why you killed your parents too? Cammy immediately asked. Yes. This last year, I caught them talking about me, how much of a disappointment I was to them, how they wished I had died instead of Horatio. Stu said with a fire in his eyes like Cammy had never seen. Stu, I'm glad you're here and they're not. Cammy spoke up and said after pondering her thoughts of choice words for a few seconds. I'm glad to hear it. I honestly didn't know how you'd take it, Stu said with a little relief, but still frozen in his numbness that was partially a heightened drug-induced state and was partly his natural emotionless, callous scarring. Horatio got the butt pillow fellatio. Cammy tried to make Stu laugh, but only got a forced smile back at her uncomfortable smile. You know, if you didn't come along and into my life, I think I would be dead already. I don't know how exactly, but I know I wouldn't have wanted to live much longer, Stu said with a crude seriousness. Well, that's exactly how I felt about myself before I met you. I'm not kidding. She looked at him with her eyes sharply piercing his, with her head tilted in such a way that her pupils were almost rolled up under her eyebrows. Well, I'm really glad you came and talked to me, Stu said without a visible smile. Me too, she said as she put her hand on his collar, and he put his hand over hers, then asked, Tell me how you killed your mom and dad. I was sneaky. It was a good idea because it worked. They liked to drink from these weird old twisty straws. They looked like tubes from Dr. Frankenstein's lab or something. I always did the dishes and had time to wash them and serve them their drinks. So that night before their bedtime, I put the smallest sliver of a cut at the ends of each of their straws. I put enough poison in their drinks that would kill them quicker if it got into their bloodstream from the microscopic cuts the straws would give their tongues. I did enough research to combine enough chemicals that we would be untraceable, Stu said with a slight enthusiasm. Although he was out of his own body, he was so high. Wow, you're really a genius, Cammy said, convinced. I know. Stu smiled and laughed like a mad scientist. Many nights he would tell her a wild story like this. The truth was far worse and had scarred him. He didn't kill his brother. His parents accidentally killed Horatio because his room was too close to the harmful chemicals of the embalming room. So Stu's brother simply died in his sleep. His parents made up this story of catching Stu in the odd hours of the night smothering Horatio. His mother shoved it down his throat and beat it in his head so much that not only was he convinced he murdered his brother, but he failed to recognize or accept the truth of his truly sick parents. That is, until one day when he had a breakthrough. This was the moment he crossed over into a completely delusional, deranged psychopath. He craved as many hallucinogens as he could get his hands on because he needed to escape his harsh reality that was too much for him to even begin to process, let alone handle. So Stu began to reject a reality that seemed more like an illusion than any drug-induced trip he could possibly concoct, even if the drugs he consumed were through cannibalism and consuming dead, rotted human flesh. Stu couldn't remember if he had killed his parents in many different scenarios he had played out in both his dreams and daydreams, or if he did actually find them dead, just like how they must have found Horatio, his sweet little brother. All Stu knew, and was actually certain of this, is that he had lost his mind. Stu was chasing his rational mind that escaped him and seemed just out of reach. His brain was metaphorically peeking around corners and disappearing just around the corner, every corner of his mind. These metaphors would often manifest into his drug trips. He had created his own boxed-in maze. There was no getting out, no escape. One day, he thought, one day he could find enough courage and muster enough confidence to tell Cammy some truth if he could find it. If he could only find it. How could he? His sane thoughts had went away screaming and running from the hideously grotesque reality that was the mangled truth. Stu stumbled with his steps in daily life. His decisions became back and forth routine motion, as he would often be floating on autopilot. His mind and thought process had been overworked for as long as he could remember. The way he was a culmination of things a boy should never see or feel in their innocence. Stu's innocence was broken and taken as soon as he could think for himself as a little boy, still a baby. How cruel life could be to children. Kids should never see, hear, and feel such terribleness, but it's the way of the world. More often than not, abuse in all sorts, ways, shapes, and forms are forever pushed under the rug of someone else's careless incompetence. If the things hidden in the dark came to light, its weight would crush, destroy, and smother the beauty in the world. Instead, the unseen and hidden vile acts of evil float on the top of society, as Stu floats weightlessly in wicked grace. For the devil knows his time is short, and so evil dark energy floats past us, right by our faces, all around us, and in us, and through us all. Chaotic static is all around us as the spirits of all evil dances around our daily lives. Even the shadows go unseen of these evil entities, since they exist as textured fragments beyond the senses of a living human, even the most gifted. What are we to do? What could someone like Stewart do if he cannot fully comprehend the severity and magnitude of psychological damage that had always been there, damaging him from the start? This poor soul never had a fucking chance. I'm not sure, Stu blurted out. Cammy just blankly stared, unbothered, and showed no concern for this random thought, as she already knew Stu was thinking out loud, and self-rationalization was just peeking out to say hello. I'm sure you're awesome, Cammy said with cheer. Thank you, Stewart said, humbled, smiled, and continued. I mean, I don't really know what happened in most of my life. I'm not sure what's real, like memories or what, because it all seems like a bad dream. My parents told me lots of things, and I don't know how many stories can be true. There were things that didn't make sense and were fabricated to fit some kind of make-believe bullshit to give an illusion of comfort. I have seen lots of weird stuff, obviously, but nothing is weirder than not being able to differentiate solid memories. If life is only memories, then my life is just a bad dream. Stu poured his heart out as best as he could. Don't be a doucheroni. It would be a real San Francisco treat if you weren't a big fat doucheroni. Cammy pushed Stu with the slightest force of her fingers with a smirk. You're the one good thing in my life, Stewie admitted. That's more like it, Cammy pleasingly smiled. If I don't live in La La Land Dreamland, then I can't cope with the reality of my existence. Stu expressed his most inner, vulnerable heart. Let me tell you who you're talking to here, Steward. I know pain. My family all died slowly of cancer caused by contamination. I've seen my whole family die around me, one after another. All my memories are of suffering and mourning, grieving and crying inside, trying to find some kind of enjoyment amongst all the death. Cammy let out some buried emotions. Is that so much to ask? Stu spoke out his ass. What the fuck are you asking? Cammy asked in anticipation. You said you're trying to find some kind of enjoyment amongst all the death. So I said, is that so much to ask? I want to put my boner in your butt. Stu spoke in all sincerity. Okay, Mr. Funny Guy, tell me something I don't know. Cammy shrugged and turned away with her arms crossed. The atmosphere in the old funeral home became thick and humid, yet light at first, until it grew to be overbearingly heavy. The light through the misty fog was eerily blinding and caused focus of vision to become nearly impossible. This reminds me of the underworld, Cammy said seriously. What do you know about the underworld? Stu asked initially. The entrance looks like this kind of atmosphere, same feeling. Cammy really tried to portray a seriousness. Okay, so you've seen the entrance of the underworld then, Stewie stated. Correct. You want to come with me? Cammy asked. Inside, in the underworld? Stu asked in amazement. Yes. I'd be so excited if you said yes, Cammy said with a pout. Yes, I want to come with you, Stu sternly said, standing up straight and puffing out his chest. Oh, I'm so excited. All right, we're gonna go for a few hours during the evening before bedtime so we can have a blast, and don't worry, we're just going to be on the edge where there's fun stuff to do off the main strip. Cammy perked up and exclaimed like she was speaking about a normal vacation. Oh yeah? I imagine these places are strange. What are they like? Unconventional? Stewart let his curiosity run wild out his mouth. Imagine once you go into one of these doors, you're taken into a place that seems like it should be in medieval England. Another door next door is an entrance to a long underground walkway through a cave. That is what it is like, Cammy said with conviction. Imagination was opened to full potential. The hallucinations peaked within their brain capacity at the same time. They were gifted a special shared moment that would be an epic journey unto their deaths. Endless twisting paths intertwined through love and the desire to be one with each other. As his cock was pumping cum up her ass balls deep, her ass came, giving her the most intense orgasm. This most euphoric sensation sent them out of body, and they saw their dead bodies connected through a cuddling position. They floated above each other's corpse in spirit, yet as ghosts within bodies. These ghost bodies were a courtesy of the natural human biology we were all created with. Mental and spiritual capabilities outdo the flesh, with spirit apparition bodies once a specter learns and masters manifestation and proper distribution of power and energy. A ghost body can manifest as a visible entity, as a projection invisible to touch, as if a hologram, which basically is a holographic spirit projection. Fantastically, sights have been seen, and much more outstanding sights are yet to be witnessed by the living world once they are united with the dead.